So homework for today dealt with now transitioning between our two scenes, having our player possibly being able to pick up a pellet. So update the game such that a player goes into the fight scene when they are trying to collect a pellet. We already have that part happening. The player is only able to successfully collect the pellet if they win in the fight scene. And then we want to keep track of the player's pellets. So this is going to deal with communication between scenes. So we're probably going to be using the singleton design pattern to accomplish that. And then, having logic in the two scenes and keeping track of that stuff. All right, I did go in and make some slight modifications to my sounds and things like that for the game, so it's at least a little bit better now. Although the I would say the animations are still on the somewhat janky side, but this is what we got now. What's up? No, it's from one of the Final Fantasy games. And the player when the player loses, it's another, the Final Fantasy death music or whatever. So at least it's better than the row your boat crap. All right. So what we want to do is we want to effectively say the fight is for a reward, right? So we're already, if we go back to our scene for our dungeon, and we already have our pellets, right? And then I think we have, let's see, the pellets have a pellet controller on them. And let's go look and see if that pellet controller is the guy that's sending us to the next scene. Pellet controller. It is not. So a pellet controller currently does nothing. So we're probably going to maybe add some stuff to that. We'll have to see. So is it maybe our player controller? Okay, so right here in our player controller, if we run into a power pellet, what we're doing right now is we're just immediately loading the fight scene. Now, what we probably want to do is we want to have a couple of different things that we're going to store at the singleton level. The singleton level probably needs to keep track of the number of pellets that the player currently has. And then we would show that somewhere on this main scene, right? Kind of keeping track of your currency, if you will. And then we might play that into extra armor or something. So out here on our main scene, I think, did we do this with I don't know if we want to do this with a canvas or do this with just a number over Chomp's head. Let's do that. I really actually kind of hate using canvases. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on Chomp. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a Text Mesh Pro. And we're going to call this guy Pellets TMP. All right, so that's where that guy is right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the position of our player. So I clicked on our player. I went and copied the position of that player. Now I'm going to go to the Text Mesh Pro for this guy, and I'm going to paste that position. Oh, sorry. I need to go. Oh, I did move the oh, that's the Chomp mesh. Sorry. I need to go to my Pellet Text Mesh Pro. And I'm going to paste the position. Okay. So right now that has put it at the position where the players. Remember, we move the player right at the beginning of the scene. Remember, we have them off the scene and then we move them in, so we didn't automatically or accidentally bump into any of the exits on the way in. So our player is kind of off to the side here, and our text mesh pro is kind of even though I've put his center at the same place as a player because of how large this is, it gets a little funky. So we'll go ahead and zoom in on Chomp. And let's just go ahead and give this Text Mesh Pro, we'll just put a 0 in there as the default. Okay, and definitely make that a whole lot smaller. So let's try it at, actually, 10 really wasn't bad. All right, we can resize it a little bit since we don't need a whole bunch of text. And, we'll just roughly center it over him. So if I go ahead and hit play now, we're not going to see it because it is there. We're looking at the top edge of it. We actually probably need it to rotate, so we're looking at it from the top down. So let's zoom in on Chomp there. We can zoom in on that pellet. And let's look from the top. Let's rotate it. I think I want to go this way. So we'll rotate it 90 degrees. Maybe have it trail behind him, something like that. Call it good enough. So now his and this really has more to do with I hate canvases for some reason, but that's more of a me being lazy thing than anything else. But we're going to use this guy to keep track of our the current number of pellets we have. This is the visual side of things. So now we're back into the MVC world, model view controller, right? So we're looking at the view part of this. So now we need to go to the controller side of this. We're going to need a variable to hold on to our number of pellets. And since we're going to be managing our number of pellets from different scenes, it's a good idea to keep things that need to be shared among different scenes inside a single central place, a la singleton. So we'll go ahead and go into our singleton here. Oh, we're getting so many source code files. I'm gonna have to put somebody else in charge of them. All right, so we're gonna say public static int current pellets. And we'll start that guy off at 0. And then whenever we get to collect a pellet, we're going to go ahead and update that. So now what we want to do is we want our dungeon scene, the scene where we see our player moving around, we want his Text Mesh Pro that shows pellets to always match whatever this value is. So we need to connect those two. And we can do that inside of, well, we can do it in several different places, but maybe we decide that why don't we have our player controller be the dude who keeps track of what's on the this Text Mesh Pro that's kind of dragging around with the player. Notice we're not moving that Text Mesh Pro at all. We just positioned it on the player where we want it, and we made it a child of the player's transform. So now wherever that transform goes, so goes the Text Mesh Pro. All right. One thing to keep in mind, I think I have shown this to you before, but just in case I didn't, is let's assume that our chomp guy here, I think we already have chomp maybe with constraints set anyways. Constraints on his, I don't, because he's not rolling. We're moving him. So let's assume that we were using gravity to move. I think we had that with the rollerball tutorial where you had gravity. Actually, he was rolling. We just kind of shove it. So he was actually rolling. If we had this Text Mesh Pro hanging off of something that is rolling, the Text Mesh Pro would roll with it. You know, it's attached to it. So one thing we can do is you can go under constraints on a rigid body and you can freeze rotation and things like that to keep it from rotating. That would allow it to still move around with the thing, so it's placed where you want it, but not participate in rotations, even though it's a child. Just something to keep in mind if you get one of those. A real fun thing to do is if you're doing a VR application with something like this, and you make your guy something and you forget to lock the rotation. And then as it's moving, you're spinning around. Yeah, you get motion sickness really quick testing it that way. All right, so we want to connect this Text Mesh Pro to our player controller. So we're going to go into our player controller. And we're going to give a public game object. Well, actually, public Text Mesh Pro. Is it called Text Mesh Pro? But it's in another. I have it in my dungeon controller.
TM Pro.
Oh, it's TM Pro, not Text Mesh Pro. That's right. Thank you. Yeah, I know. But I think it'll be included, but we'll put it up there if it's part of it. And then we're gonna say this is gonna be the pellet TMP. I don't know which of those is better. Go with that. All right, pellet TMP. All right, then as he pointed out, we this guy still doesn't know about it, so we need to do a using TM Pro. And now we have that namespace. And I thought that guy should be good with it. There we go. Using TM Pro and Text Mesh Pro as an object from that. All right, so we have our pellet TMP. Now, whenever this thing starts, so our player controller starts whenever this scene starts, we want that Text Mesh Pro to be filled in, have its text filled in with whatever our current singleton's pellet count is. So we'll go into start and we'll say, set the current pellet count for the player. We'll say this dot, is it the player maybe? Current player? Or is that in the singleton as well? It is. Must be in the singleton. That's the player. Oh, we need to give ourselves the Text Mesh Pro inside of our player controller. So that is our pellet TMP. We'll say this dot pellet TMP dot text is equal to my singleton dot current pellets. Now that's just going to be a integer right now. So I need it to be a string. So I'll just concatenate onto it the empty string. So how do you turn an int into a string in Java or C#? You concatenate it onto the empty string and now it's a string. All right, so we'll do that whenever the player controller starts. The player controller starts every single time we come to the dungeon scene. So it'll happen when we first start the game. It'll also happen when we come back from a fight because we're actually just loading the dungeon scene again for the current room we're in. Okay. So just to prove this is working, I'm going to go ahead and change the text on this guy to a question mark. We'll go into our player controller over here where it's expecting our pellet TMP. So I'm going to drag that guy over there. So now we've given our script access to that Text Mesh Pro for our pellets. My default value there is a question mark. We should see it flip to a 0. So now we programmatically are connecting up the contents of that Text Mesh Pro to our singleton. All right. So now what happens when we go into a fight scene? You can just see what happens here. I think we're already loading into a fight scene. So right now I have a pellet above me. I hit that. We're now in the scene here. Should put in a little cheat code where if like the player is about to die, like a little Jesus animation comes in and heals him to full. All right. Homework assignment. Jesus heal buff. All right. So we're already going into the scene. It's doing its fight thing. We know who wins and who loses. We're not necessarily going to assume a game over for our player, but he won't get to pick up the pellet that he just had. We won't get to get credit for the pellet he just had, but if he wins the fight, he will get credit for the pellet. All right, so we need to deal with that. So if we go into our fight controller, so here's our fight controller that we've been working on. And this is the guy that keeps track of whether the monster wins or the player wins. And right here is where our hero wins. And I have changed a couple of things in here for the new music, and I was messing around with the timing on the animations and stuff, and I just decided it's just going to look janky, and that's okay. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to have our singleton, my singleton dot current pellets increase by 1. So if the hero wins, it's going to increase by 1, and then we want to have the go back to the next scene, or the fight scene. I'm sorry, the dungeon scene once we've won the fight. All right, but we want to hear our music playing for a little bit, so we need to create a delay here that maybe waits for 2 seconds or something, so some of the music can do it, or we can have like a space bar, press space bar to go back to the scene or to continue or something like that. In fact, let's actually do it that way instead of a timer. That way we can hear our music. All right, so we want to be able to listen for a press, a key press. So we're going to do that inside of update. All right, so right now update doesn't have anything in it. So what we want to do is we want to, maybe we're going to do press space bar to continue, but we only want to do this if we're allowed to leave the scene with a space bar. So if the fight's over. Okay, so when we first come to the scene, the fight is not over. So let's give ourselves a private bool is fight over. Set that to false. So we'll remember whether or not the fight is over. Down here inside of update, we'll ask the question, if is fight over? So if the fight has ended, and when does the fight end? It ends when either a monster wins or a hero wins. So we'll say this dot is fight over is equal to true. And we'll also, that's when the hero wins. We'll also do it when the monster wins. Okay. So then inside of update, if the fight is finally over, so this is when the fight is finally over. And we could decide to do this inside of like fixed update, maybe if we wanted it to happen less often instead of every single frame, maybe happen 60 frames a second. I don't think we're going to necessarily notice a difference here at our size game, but imagine as a game gets more and more and more complex, the more questions we ask here every single frame, the more it's going to slow down. So you can move the logic around if you want, but we'll put it here right now. So if the fight is over, we want to go back to the dungeon scene. Remember, we've already incremented or chose not to increment the pellets based on whether the person won or lost. All right, because the only way is fight over is flipped is after we've updated the pellets. Okay. So what do we want to do? We want to probably like delay 2 seconds. So actually, we decided we weren't going to delay 2 seconds. We're going to listen for a key press, right? So now we're going to ask if key code dot that. Oh, it's input. Input dot key get key up key code dot space. All right. So if the fight is over and they hit the space bar, then we're going to go ahead and you could have put that as an and too. You could have said if the fight is over and they hit the space bar rather than 2 separate if statements. So if the fight is over and they hit the space bar, then we want to go ahead and load our dungeon scene. What is our... It's my dungeon controller. I just want to find, I think it's called scene manager.load scene. Is that right? We might need to include something. Dungeon controller. Where's me? Oh, that's dungeon, not dungeon controller. No, that's dungeon controller. Player controller must be where we hit the pellets. Editor, scene manager, this guy. We'll go back to our fight controller. And we'll ask our editor scene manager to load the dungeon room. And that guy lives in a library that we haven't included yet. This guy right here, scene management. I'll make sure you have the library added that allows you to manage the scenes. So now if the fight is over and we've pressed the space bar, we'll go ahead and load the dungeon scene again. Now at this point, we haven't dealt with whether or not the pellet should have been picked up or not. I actually think maybe we, from a previous assignment, have. Because I think once we hit the pellet, we did go ahead and collect it, but we'll fix that in a second. But this should take us back to the dungeon scene, and it should show that we now have 1 pellet, assuming we won the fight. Okay, that's we want to see this communication between our scenes. So I'll make sure everything's saved over here. We decided you're in charge of me saving things, right?
Yes.
Okay. Have you been paying attention? You haven't. I've been watching. It's not good. Okay. With us running the show, this isn't going to go well. And so there needs to be an adult in the room. All right. So, all right. I think we're probably okay, maybe. So let's get into a fight. All right, so we press our space bar. He's back in the room. All right, so he has one power pellet now, and it does show that we picked up the pellet, but not necessarily for the right reason. Because if we go in and we have the monster win, we're going to come back out with pellets being 0, but also the pellet will be gone. I think we we could decide how you want your game to work. We could have the game work the way it's working right now, where every time you hit a pellet, it's the opportunity to gain a power pellet. But if you lose the fight, you've lost the opportunity. Yeah, I kind of like that one. Plus, we don't have to write any more code for that part. Okay, it wouldn't be hard to write. Because we're keeping track of the current room already, and if you remember, I think it's inside of our room object. So my singleton knows about the current room we're in. Well, it knows about the player, and the player knows about the current room. All right. So if we look at our room thing here, we keep track of whether those pellets should be there. So upon a loss, we're also keeping track of the current direction we were heading. So upon a loss, we could go back and tell our current room to reset the pellet, to put the pellet back. But I don't know, I kind of like the idea. So it wouldn't be hard code. It would be a couple if statements. But I kind of like the idea of a pellet being the opportunity to pick up a power pellet, which we could use for different stuff. Versus if you lose the fight, you miss that opportunity. We could also decide, what do we want it to do once the fight is over? Do we have it put us back into the room that we were in with the pellet no longer there? Do we have us continue into the room that we were heading to? I'm not sure it necessarily matters, given that we've already done the logic of having our guys enter into the room when we leave a room, and the pellet kind of interferes with that logic. We could just leave it where it's at now, where it says, let's put you back in the center of the room you were just in. We're in a fight in the middle of the room. You won the fight. You picked yourself up. You dusted off. You didn't actually make it to your door. You're back in the middle of the room, and now you can go, and whatever pellet was in your way before is now gone, so you can go back through the door. Okay. So we can say that maybe is a reasonable way of doing this. So we'll have winner lose the fight here real quick. Maybe you want to have it say press space bar or something. Although it's an Easter egg. Otherwise, you're just trapped on in that scene. All right, but we notice here that now his number of pellets is 0. He missed that opportunity. So now we can go into our next scene. Oh, another fight. Oh, that quick. We actually lose. Oh, the player's health was still 0. All right. All right. So our player slid into that room dead. Is what happened. He was in zombie mode. So something we didn't do is, as we were fighting, because remember when we came into our fight scene, we generated a brand new monster, but we had a single player, right? So we are going to need to I mean, we could go a couple different routes. So you can either, have like a healing potion or something like that, where your player can use that to get their hit points back. Maybe we put them back into the main room with 1 hit point, so they're technically not dead. They've just been knocked unconscious or something like that. But then there's a pretty high chance they're going to die when they get into the next room. And if you haven't collected enough potions, how are you going to heal yourself? So for now, let's go ahead and just heal him to full, and we'll to allow him to go around our dungeon. So a fight has no permanent impact other than whether or not you got to collect that pellet or not. So that means inside of our fight controller, knows about our let's go to our try attack. Here's our damage roll. We tell our defender to take some damage. So when a fight starts, we need to remember what this player's current damage or current hit points was. So let's do this. So a player is an inhabitant. Inhabitants all have hit points. We've taught inhabitants how to take damage. But what we probably want to do is have a player also keep track of max hit points instead of current hit points as well. So we're going to say protected HP, AC, and max HP. When we first create a inhabitant, the HP and the max HP will both be the same. Now, this won't matter for monsters, since monsters, as we currently have it, they only exist for as long as the fight scene exists. So they'll be killed off. But our players here will, we probably need to have a player have the ability to reset, something like that. So why don't we go ahead and just so we can start differentiating our players, why don't we go ahead and add reset into the player class instead of the inhabitant? So we'll say that's something that a player can do that a monster can't. So we can't reset the player. But right now, resetting a player only means setting its current hit points back to whatever max hit points were. So we'll go into our player class. So this is the guy that's managing our player. And now we're going to go ahead and we're going to give it a public void reset stats, something like that. And we'll say this dot HP is equal to this dot max HP. So we'll overwrite whatever our hit points are with whatever our max hit points are. And now we just need to remember to tell when we end a fight, regardless of who won, that the player needs to get reset so that he can live to fight another day, whether he won or he's just pretty beat up. But, well, whether he's beat up and won or he's extremely beat up and lost. So that'll be inside of our fight controller. All right, so when a game is over, since it doesn't matter whether or not this happens, whether or not the player won or lost, we're resetting the player. We'll go ahead and say this dot hero. Actually, we don't need to do it there. We can say my singleton, right? My singleton dot the player dot reset stats. Give the player their HP back. That's what that'll do for right now. All right, so now the player should be able to, we'll see what he's at the beginning of a fight. He's 11 hit points. Nothing rolling either, but So now we should see starts back off at 11 again. Oh, it looks like he was at 14 actually. It's not 11. All right. So this guy's getting no pellets. All right. So now we have the opportunity. We can move all around our dungeon and we have a fixed number of pellets that can be collected. And it is based on the strength of our player. At this point, we really don't have a way of making our player stronger to hopefully win more fights. So, you know, there really isn't a game thing to it other than just watching a simulation of a death fight through a dungeon or whatever. But we can move our player around the dungeon and collect as many pellets as we can possibly collect. What do we think should come next? What are we missing in our game? We can fight, we can collect pellets. Maybe collect stuff that makes our dude stronger. So maybe that we get that like at the middle of a room or something like that. So we could have like an upgraded sword or something like that. As you move through the dungeon, you get upgraded weapons. But maybe these things cost something, right? So maybe you pay pellets, for example. Maybe that's your currency, and you pay pellets to buy the weapon. I kind of am thinking now like Legend of Zelda. You played the original Legend of Zelda game. You know, you would go into these different and you run into the shopkeeper, and the shopkeeper would have, you know, your upgraded weapon or something like that. And but you know, you had to have enough coins in order to whatever rupees. Is that what it was? Or ruble? What was it in rupees? So enough rupees in Zelda in order to buy the weapon. So we could do that. We could have the either have shops be discoverable on our map, or we could have a button that allowed us to at any point in time go into the shop, but not during a fight. So maybe we have to be in the dungeon scene, not currently in a battle, and we can go into the shop and purchase something like that. Okay, so what we need to have then is we need to have a shop scene, right? A scene where we're going to have the shop salesman guy, and he might have a collection of things that we can buy. Maybe we have health potions and stuff like that. Eventually, we're going to come back and we're going to reimagine our fight scene where instead of it's being automated, it's turn-based, where when it's our turn, we get to choose, like if you've ever played Final Fantasy, you get to choose what you want to do. Do you want to fight? Do you want to use an item like a potion? Do you want to cast a magical spell? If you happen to have I don't know, a scroll or something, we can decide how we want it to work. But the player's attack doesn't happen until we choose an option. All right, but right now we only know how to attack just randomly, so we're just going to let it keep cooking, and let's go ahead and build our logic around a shopkeeper. All right, so what does this scene look like? Oh, we're going to create a new scene. All right, we'll call this guy Shopkeeper scene. All right, so this is what that scene looks like. We're going to go ahead and we're going to, here, I'm going to go into fight scene real quick. I'm just going to copy chomp. And then I'll paste chomp in there. We can choose how we want it oriented since he's already facing to the, I don't know, in Zelda, he would come into the room, he'd walk in from down here to a center point, and then we have your shopkeeper up here. So, you know, let's go ahead and do that. So let's rotate this guy. -90, but you really can't tell where he's looking. Okay, well, I guess you can tell he's looking forwards, if you will. So we probably have him head into that room, similar to what we did before, just to kind of make our game feel like it was um, uh, doing something interesting. So now we got to get our shopkeeper in there. Let's see what he looks like. Characters. So shopkeeper, is he a red ghost? We can certainly go and find other shopkeepers, but he's a red ghost in our shops. All right, we'll rotate him down. I think it's 180. Okay. And then we want to have some props that you can possibly get. Let's see what we got inside of prefabs. Anything good? Okay, well, we can pick up healing. We're going to say that cherries heal us, but we can't really pick up. Oh, there's a power pellet. Is that what we used for our pellets? That is. All right. Um, but we probably want to have the ability to get a better sword and stuff too, but we can look at that um, through the store. But I'll go ahead and put our cherry out there as one thing that we can buy. We probably want to scale this down. Maybe to 0.5, 0.5, 0.5, 0.5. Okay. And just so we can see it a little bit better, I'm going to also rotate that at 90 degrees so we can see what that guy looks like. So even though we have a top down, well, we actually don't have a top down view. That's just how we're looking at it. If we look at our camera's seeing this from the distance. So we're going to go ahead and drag our camera over to give us kind of our top down view. And let's look at it from the side. Let's rotate down. That's going to be at 90. Then move that guy up. Go from the top. Right. Now this is what that scene looks like. So we can make it look different if we want. All right. So we probably want to have maybe for right now we can decide that the cherry upgrades our weapon or upgrades our attack to make us hit harder. Maybe we have a couple of different things we can get, but we purchase these with pellets. So we can have our pellets dragging behind our player like we did before. So here's Chomp. Right click here. We will say create a text mesh pro. Call this pellet TMP. I want to, and that's going to disappear because I forgot to stop the game. Let's do it again. Create a pellet TMP. Right. And now we're going to go ahead and rotate that so we can read the text. It's to 90. And move it down a little bit. Actually, let's shrink it down to a value first. And I think we had the font at like 8 or something like that. All that good enough. Give it a little bit more space in case you have a bunch of pellets. All right. So we have that guy run our scene. We should be able to see it. All right. So this is our buying power, like our money. And then we need to have a cost for each thing. So maybe our weapon upgrade is one pellet, something like that for right now. So I'll go to our cherry here and we will add a text mesh pro. And this is going to be item cost TMP. Except again, the game is running. Do it again. Remember, you can't add anything when the game is running. Item cost TMP. I'll go ahead and shrink this down. Now, just real quick, let me ask you this question. This guy's font is 8. This guy's font is also 8. Why is this question mark smaller than this one? Cherry is scaled down to 50%, right? And since this guy is a child of that game object, he inherits. This is the inheritance model, just like object-orientedness. He inherits the scale factor from the parent. So if I want it to be the same size, I could just fudge the math and say, okay, well, this is actually going to be 16. And now it's the same size. Make some sense? So you can decide what's the right level of awesome for yours. All right, so for our homework, again, given the sample code, update the game such that a player can spend, what do we call them? Pellets? To buy items that enhance the player. For now, we have a single item that will give the player a bonus to attack. So they will hit harder. You can decide how much harder they should hit and decide how you need to implement this. All right. So test this by winning a fight. And then, well, maybe do this. Test this by artificially increasing the attack bonus to make sure it is working before you remove that fake bonus and only allow the player to get the bonus when they actually collect pellets. So see what I'm saying? You can upgrade your player the way you think you need to upgrade your player, then give them the bonus initially and see how the fight goes. Do you know what kind of bonus to give them? Then once you got that scaled right, then you can go and make it so he actually has to earn the bonus rather than just get it. All right, questions, comments, concerns, bribes. All right, remember tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. I'm guessing it's going to be out here in the lobby. It's me and Dr. Josh Locklear doing a metaverse death match or something. I don't know what I think it's a fight to the death, is what I've heard, or somebody gets a sticker. But in any case, that's at 6:30 tomorrow, only live, not on Zoom. So come and check it out. Root against me, heckle, all that stuff. There is a tech talk tonight at, it's either 5 or 5:30. 5, but that's on Zoom. Yeah.
If we come with signs rooting for you, do we get extra credit?
Potentially, if they're funny enough.
Oh, we can meet up. We can work with this.
All right, sounds good, Ben.
We'll get the art students to actually do something with their time.
We're gonna can we you know, like put like can we take our shirts off and put like Littman on our chest?
Actually,
I mean, I'm fine with whatever. I would say if you think it would be cool, like if it'd be fine at a football game, you can do it.
All right.
I mean, I usually smash somebody's head in a football.
What are your favorite colors, Professor? I'm gonna put them on face paint, you know?
Oh, well, I definitely like red. I like pink.
Okay. All right. All right, sounds good.
Well, I like red personally, and then I like colors that like get people's attention. You know, like if you walk
Yeah.
into a room as this big giant dude with like a neon pink shirt on.
Yes on that.
What's up?
All right, have a good day, Professor.
Yep, take care.
So one, I was told that we were filming in here for the Amazon